of course, he's a journalist, he's a writer, he's a photographer, and he got into the habit of looking at birds in the 1970s. And this habit has still, luckily for us, still continued. And he's still continuing to write in lockdown, and hopefully will have many, many more enthralling tales to share with us in his own inimitable style, which is the most wonderful to read. And how he manages to transmit such factual details in such a light, sort of humorous manner that really grips anyone who's reading his stories is really amazing. Ranjit, you're one of a kind, and now let's hear it from you. Please, Ranjit.
In this webinar, whatever, is how I translate fact into fiction. Because I'm a writer, so I am interested in birds. And being a writer, you unfortunately also have to be interested in people. Now, when I started watching birds and all that, I was not interested in making long lists. But what I was seeing was the similarities between birds and people. And for example, you take jungle babblers. Now, they have always reminded me of cops. They're both in khaki. Cops have their lathis, which they are swinging around. Babblers have their tails. And most of all, they have that expression, that glowering, frowning, surly expression in there. The only difference is that babblers have a very soft spot also, which I've always said that, cops should adapt when they go for their morning parade. Early in the morning, if you see babblers, they're often all lined up on a branch and nuzzling each other. And their expressions are priceless. They are ecstatic and yet glowering and frowning like all cops. So basically, a lot of birds remind me of people. And so I decided that, okay, now this is a nice way of introducing birds to maybe children and people who are not that interested. So anyway, I first produced this book, Birds from My Window, which is based on basically all the birds I've seen from my window and what they are up to. And the stories in this one are based on the facts that I've written in this one, the observations I made in this one. So it goes from fact to fiction. And it was great fun doing it because, what started it off was this, magpie robin that I met in Goa. We'd gone to Goa for a holiday, and 3 o'clock in the morning, this guy starts singing. Of course, he sings beautifully, but it is 3 o'clock in the morning, and I mean, you're on a holiday, but then he's a maestro, you can't put your pillow over your head and try to go back to sleep. So you have to pay respect and listen to him. So I listened to him, finally he stopped and all that, and then I said, hopefully next morning he won't. Next morning, he started at 5:30 and he started singing. And then after 5 or 10 minutes, kept quiet. I said, thank God, his wife has probably told him, shut up. Then he goes to another perch in the same area and starts singing another song. I said, oh God, this guy's really, I've been giving a recital, now it's a concert. And then he goes to a third spot and starts a third song. Then I started also thinking that, hey, maybe it's not one guy, maybe it's 3 different magpie robins competing with each other. So we have a competition going on here. But when I went into the garden, I could only find one magpie robin, male and female. And now you know that birds sing either to win a mate, to drive away the other males, and to declare their territory, basically. So he already had a mate. So I said, okay, let's see what happens. And I forgot about it for a long time. Then I read a book on birding, on bird song. And there it had been mentioned that sometimes male birds, they will sing different songs from different perches in the same large area pretending to be different male birds, so that any outside interloper will say that if I want this area, I will have to deal with 3 guys, which is not worth it because I'll get bashed up. So he won't come. So that was the basis of the story that I wrote, the first story in this book, which is called Mad Mozart Gives a Recital. Mad Mozart, of course, is the singer. So Mad Mozart starts singing. He has a similar territory, which these stories are based in Goa, and they're based around a family of jungle babblers, who I call the screechers and shriekers. So that's just the sort of meeting point of all this accounts in the story. So what happens is Magpie Robin has this. He has 3 buildings. He has a swimming pool. There are lawns, there are bushes, there are flowering plants, so very good area for Magpie Robins. So he starts singing 5 o'clock in the morning. These screechers and shriekers get annoyed. They said that look at him. It was 5 o'clock in the morning and he started singing, driving us nuts. And, we've got to do something about it. I mean, you can't go on like this. What is going on? And they are shut up by this barn owl that also lives over there, called Banshee, who we shall meet later also. And he says, look, I like music. You guys shut up or I'm going to get after you. So they keep quiet. And sure enough, next door, in what is called the rave retreat, what I've called, is a female magpie robin called Melody. She hears this guy and she comes over and she looks at him and she's got tears coming out of her eyes and she says, you sing beautifully. I mean, it is really gorgeous. So he's very happy, of course, and he says that, would you like to stay with me? And I mean, look at this, all this area is mine and we can have a very nice family and all the rest of it. Now she's a sensible girl. She says, I don't want to make up my mind right away. You sing beautifully, I know that, but let me think about it and I'll come back tomorrow morning and let you know. So Mr. Mozart gets very alarmed. He says, this one has gone and I better do something about it. So next morning, he sings one song, then he goes to another perch and sings another song, which is even more beautiful. And he says, okay, now I've got her. She will come, no doubt. And so she does, she comes, but she's not looking at him. She is looking around and she's distracted. And he asks her, is there a problem? Have you got a headache or, what's the issue? And she says that, I know you sing beautifully, but this morning I heard another magpie robin over here who sings even more beautifully. I want to go and find where he is. And she flies off. So he's left with 0. Now, when I first finished the story, I wrote the story out. It came out and all that, and I think some school wanted to use it. And they said, the kids are very upset that the story ended this way. Can you give it a happy ending? So I said, okay, well, I could probably do that. And the way to do that was to make Mr. Mozart, he sings the second song as this melody is flying away, so that she realizes that it's him all along. And she comes back. So, I mean, this is how, I have great fun in translating fact into fiction. This is just one story. There are a lot of them over here. And I think the story I had a lot of fun with was actually the story When Banshee Kissed Bimbo, which in this book has been retitled When Banshee and Bimbo Upset the Minister. Now, this was written at a time when the moral police were getting after couples in parks for holding hands and kissing and all that. And even the government was getting after them and putting them into jail, and they were being thrown into jail and, something stupid like this. And so I said, now I've got to think about how one can do a story like this. And at this point of time, Dr. Oswald, he and I used to study quite often. And we went off to Kutsia Gardens next door. And it was Republic Day, freezing, foggy. And he said, there's a family of barn owls which you must meet. And he showed me, we went to this old gulmohar tree, and there was this hollow, and these two barn owls, they were facing east, the rising sun, and they were smooching their eyeballs off. It was just wonderful to watch. And what was even more hilarious was that on the other side of that, the tree trunk, were the three babies, woolly babies, one sitting on top of the other, their eyes absolutely round, probably wondering what the hell are Mama and Papa doing, early in the morning. Come on. So that was the basis of the story. So I said, okay. So there is this, I told you about this rave retreat. And this is where a minister is holding a convention. The Minister for Cultural Propriety is having a major meeting over there. And when she wakes up early in the morning and faces the sun to do her Surya Namaskar, the first thing she sees is Banshee and his new wife, Bimbo, smooching their eyeballs up. So she freaks out. She says, this is not Indian culture, and how can, look what these foreigners are doing to us, and etc., etc. So she completely freaks out, and she calls the manager and says that, look, you can't have this kind of depraved behavior going on just outside your retreat. You've got to do something about it. And so the manager says, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, miss, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and whatever. And he organizes a bunch of men who come and they start hammering on that tree. And basically they drive Banshee and Bimbo out. They go and they take shelter in a deserted church nearby. And they're very upset naturally. But so are the other birds, because they say now, oh my God, all these rats and bandicoots are going to get after us, because that's what, these Banshee and Bimbo kept them in check. So we are in trouble. So they say, no, what we'll do is we'll organize something. And the leader of the Screechers and Shriekers, she organizes, she gets these doves, these blue rock doves, the common ones, who are perpetually flirting with each other. She gets a whole bunch of them to come and do their cabaret, their dances or whatever in the garden, while the minister is having her convention. So of course the minister again freaks out. But what's also happening is that the rats and bandicoots are having a ball, because they are raiding birds' nests. They are raiding the food tables. They are, freaking out totally. So in the middle of the night, this minister is woken up by this sort of scuffling sound. And she puts on the light and she sees that on the TV, there's this big fat bandicoot dancing. And there are others also that do their cabaret acts, and they're helping themselves to the fruit basket. And one of them even very rudely invites her to join them. So again, she has another tantrum. But what the hell is this? And she goes running off to a holy man. She says, I have to ask him for a solution. These hotel people are useless. And so she goes to this holy man, and he listens to her, and he says, Ullu? And she says, what do you mean Ullu? Then he says, rats and bandicoots? She said, yeah. Have you driven any way? She says, no, we support rats and bandicoot because 20% of our food supply goes to them anyway. She says, no. If you have driven away any Ullus from here, that's your problem. So obviously the minister, she comes back freaky. She says, the prime minister hears this, my job is out on the line. So she comes back and she asks the manager that you please get these owls back, because otherwise I'm in trouble. So the other birds hear all this and they ask the Banshee and Bimbo to come back. So that's how that story ends. So again, it's, using fact and developing it into fiction, which I find very, very great fun. It's really interesting to do. And so there are other stories. There's another story about a pair of hornbills who are called Shabby and Sweetie Ash. Now they are a couple, and Shabby, who is the male, is one of these completely paranoid about security. Now, when hornbills nest, it's generally the female goes inside the hollow and they seal up the hollow, leaving just a slit so that she can, be fed from there by the male. So that's what they normally do. Now, this is what starts to happen. And, but Shabby is very annoyed. He's very scared. He says, we seal it up with mud and we seal it up with feces and all that. And that won't do these days. The security is not tight enough. So he thinks of an idea and he seals up the nest. He goes next door and he gets something and he seals up the nest. And anyway, so Sweetie Ash, she has her chicks, and then the chicks are getting bigger and bigger, and poor Shabby is finding it hard to feed them all. So it's time for Sweetie Ash, the mother, to also come out and then help her husband. She finds she cannot get out. And she says, now open up. What do you mean? And he tries also, and he can't open it. So she asks him, what the hell did you use to seal it? She said, there was this building that is coming up next door. I got reinforced concrete from there and I put that. So, now they're stuck. What to do? Because neither of them can open the thing. And all the other birds are gathered around, like, happens when there's a car accident. And they're passing comments that he's done it deliberately because he wants to run after someone else. And look at him, he's killing, he's going to murder all his whole family. And he is, of course, very upset. In flies a woodpecker, the golden-backed woodpecker, called Sona Munda. Now, he's a hell of a cocky chap. And he says, yo, what's the problem out here? So Shabby tells him that this is the issue now. So no problem, I'll deal with it. But my price is 1,000 beetles, and you have to call me sir there after this. So the guy agrees. He says, okay, theek hai, that's the only way. So the Sona Munda has a quarter concrete. Nothing doing. His beak tears, he gets a headache. Says, anybody got a discipline here? Because I can't, I've got a headache now and I can't, continue. Now a little coppersmith comes, the Coppersmith Barb, which is also, it's related to the woodpeckers. So he comes along and he's called Tuk Tuk. And he asks, now what's happening out here? So the Sona Munda tells me, what the hell? I couldn't open it. And you think you can open it, look at your size, look at the size of your beak. So this guy sort of says, okay, let me think. And he taps on it and he realizes that kaam nahi hoga. And then he starts going behind the trunk. And he finds a soft spot behind the trunk. And he makes a little hole over there. And from that, then they make it bigger and bigger and the family can get out. So sometimes, you can think, you have to think kind of out of the box to get your way out. Now, these are the sort of stories that I love writing. And one of Inspector Courtois comes calling. Now, Inspector Courtois is a black drongo, which we all know is a very fierce protector of his family and his nest. And other birds like doves and orioles sometimes will nest in the same tree to get avail of that protection. Because this guy, the drongos are not scared of anything. They will drive up any other bird away. So Inspector Courtois has his nest over there. And there's this bulbul and an oriole who also have a nest in the same tree. Now, as we know now, snakes love birds' eggs and chicks. And there is a rat snake around called Daman. And Daman says that I'm going to poke Mr. Courtois one in the eye, because when he's away, I'm going to visit these guys. So he goes up to the bulbul's nest. Courtois has gone, looking for khana, And he says, I represent the Courtois Benevolent Fund, and you need to make a donation of 1 egg to me. And of course, the poor Bulbul freaks out. He says, what do you mean? I mean, this has never happened. He says, no, it's happening now. Because if you need to avail of the protection, this is what it's going to cost you. So he takes an egg. Then he goes off to the Oriole's nest and does the same thing there. He takes another egg and he says, well, this Courtois Benevolent Fund is fabulous. I'm on a really good wicket and I can go to other trees and other birds and do the same thing. And I mean, I'm made. It's very nice. And so he gets greedy, because one day Mr. Courtois goes off into a nearby rice field, and where they're plowing, so he's chasing the insects that these cattle are sort of making the cattle, that driven away by the cattle by their feet. So he's busy over there, and this guy goes back into that tree, and he goes to this third nest, and he tells the bird over there that now you have to pay up. This is the Courtois Benevolent Fund. You have to give 1 egg, and he takes 1 egg quickly and swallows it. And that lady freaks. She says, do you know who I am? I am Mrs. Courtois. You have pitched an egg from my nest and saying my husband is doing this. So the snake gets a little alarmed and he goes away and he goes into his hole and he says, I'll just sit it out. They'll forget after a bit and he goes out. And so in the meanwhile, these other birds have complained also to Courtois that, this is what is happening. This racket has started in your name. What do you mean by, you're a cop, you can't do this. And he freaks out because he's not been doing it. So he gets after them and he lathi charges them and he drives them away and he's freaking out. Then later he just thinks that, hey, maybe this is a pretty good racket that we could get into, because I can get eggs from other birds and chicks also and feed them to my wife and the chicks, and they'd be very healthy and all the rest of it. So I go and approach her with this idea. So he goes back home and he's saying, dear, I've got this fabulous idea. We can take hafta from these birds. She gives him hell. She says, what do you mean? What kind of guy have I married? He takes hafta from his own family? Are you nuts? So then they realize that what has happened. But now how to stop this snake? So they go to Banshee and Bimbo. Banshee is the brains in the outfit. So they ask him, Abhi kya kare? What should we do? So Banshee says, okay, what you can do is you go to this guy called Prince Shammy, and he will sort out the problem for you. Prince Shammy happens to be a peacock who has been brought to this retreat as an ornamental bird. So they tell him what the problem is. He says, don't worry, I'll take care of the snake, but this is what you will have to do for me. And that is, there is this singing competition coming along in a little while, and you'll have to pick me as the best singer. Now, how what peacocks sing like. Meow, 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 there's hell of a racket. So these poor birds say, okay, we finally agree. The judges who are part of the screechers and shriekers said, our name will be Mud and all that, but what to do? Magpie Robin Mozart is very upset because normally he's the winner. And so this peacock is made best songbird in the whole area. So he is so thrilled, he doesn't stop singing. And he drives these other birds absolutely crazy with his song. So they said, now what do we do? How do we stop this guy? So Banshee says, okay, he has a harem of 7. You go to the queen bee of the harem, and you tell her, because even they must be getting fed up of listening to this guy. So they go to the harem queen, and they say that, can you guys shut him up, please? So she says, of course I can. Of course we can. No issue at all. But there's a beauty contest coming up very soon. And you are now looking at the beauty queen of that contest. So that's how this story ends. So as you can see, I really enjoyed writing these stories. And in fact, my first book, The Crow Chronicles, was again based in Bharatpur, and it's full of birds. It's full, it's all the characters are birds. And there are rats and bandicoots and tomcats and all the rest of it also. But it's a very fat book, but it was fabulous to sort of write. So this is how I generally try to work. And I just feel that you need to enjoy yourself while you're doing this sort of thing, because otherwise, things become very academic or, dry. So this is how I sort of function. And I think if you have any now questions or anything like that. Hello? Hello?
Hi, Ranjit. Thank you for that. We'll just open up the chat box. So in case anybody has any questions, they can start typing in the chat box and then we can ask them to Ranjit.
Okay. The name of the book is now The Parakeet That Squawked in English and Other Stories. And in fact, you wanted to listen to another one. Well, let me tell you about The Parakeet That Squawked in English. Now, this is about a little girl who gets kidnapped. And her kidnappers are holding her in this little shed. And they've kept her prisoner over there. And so she doesn't know what to do. I mean, she's quite upset. So all these there are three kidnappers, two men and a woman. So one of the men has a bit of a soft heart, and he says, okay, we've got to keep her here maybe for a week. She's going to be a hell of a nuisance. So we have to keep her amused or whatever. So he buys her a parakeet, an Alexandrian parakeet in a cage, and he gives it to her and he says, this is for you. So she's quite happy. And she is a very, very clever little girl. She starts teaching this parakeet. My name is Jyoti. I have been kidnapped. So she keeps teaching this parrot these words. And the parakeet picks it up. It learns. And after a week, she frees the parakeet. Says, go, you go. And in the meanwhile, these kidnappers have been negotiating for ransom, and they are awful because they've decided that we will take the ransom, but this is happening near a beach, and we take her out to the sea and drown her, throw her off the boat, and that's the end of the matter. We'll go because she knows who we are. She's seen our faces, so we are in trouble. So they decide to do that. Now this parakeet goes out, and he goes and he meets the screechers and shriekers and the other parakeets and other birds. And he starts boasting that I can talk in English. I know English. And what do you know? My name is Jyoti Sen. I have been kidnapped. So they ask him, do you know what it means? So it doesn't matter what it means. I can speak English. What do you mean? I mean, I'm much better than you guys are. So amongst these birds, there are two parakeets called Sita and Kula, and Prune and Plum, who are blossom-headed parakeets, and a couple of mynas also, who are also keen to learn English. So they say that, okay, thank you. Can you take us to this little girl so that she can teach us also the language? So he says, oh, sure, no problem and all that. So he takes them over there. And he takes them at the time when this girl is being taken away by her kidnappers to a boat. And so they flap around following this little procession that's going on. And the parakeet that squawked in English, who calls himself Shakespeare, he's saying, my name is Jyoti Sen. I have been kidnapped. And on the beach, there are these college kids playing basketball or playing volleyball. They hear this and they've heard that this little girl has gone missing. And they realize what is happening. And they catch the kidnappers. So that's the story that started this book off. That's the title. The lead title is from there.
Great. Thank you, Ranjit. That was really fantastic. You had us all glued to your stories. While we have the questions coming in, I'd request everyone to just type their messages in the chat, like any questions that they have for Ranjit in the chat box. Meanwhile, we have a few announcements to make. I'll just share my screen and then we can go through. Okay, here's the first announcement. So we have Sanctuary Nature Foundation as our partners for these talks. So anybody who's attending these talks gets a 1 year free digital subscription to Sanctuary Asia or Sanctuary Cup magazines. So in case you'd like to avail of this offer, please just go to this website, delhibirdfoundation.org/offers, and then you can just give your details there and get your subscription of Sanctuary Asia or Sanctuary Cup magazines. In addition to this, we've been running this contest in association with Zeiss, wherein we ask one question at the end of every talk, and the best answer gets a prize from Zeiss, either a Zeiss binocular harness or a cleaning kit. So today's question is, which is the one bird that does not fly like a conventional bird, and what does it fly like? Now, in order to submit your answers to this question, you need to go to this website, www.delhibirdfoundation.org/contest, and there you can answer this question. If you'd like, you can maybe take a photograph or a screenshot of this page so that you know what the link is. I'll leave it on for another 5 seconds before I move on to the third announcement that we have to make. Great. I hope all of you managed to note down the address there. And the last announcement for the day is we are coming up with the Great Indian Nature Quiz, which is going to be held on Sunday, the 12th of July at 5 p.m. It's going to be hosted by Bikram Grewal, and it's going to cover birds, animals, fish, flora, fauna, everything. So it's going to be a one-of-a-kind quiz. We're planning to have it virtually, given the lockdown situation, and would request you all to please block your dates for that. We can now move on to questions for Ranjit. Let me just read a few out. Okay, we have a very interesting question from Pia for you, Ranjit. She's asking, do you find your friends morphing into your bird personalities in your books?
Pardon? I didn't catch that.
Pia is asking, do you find your friends morphing into your bird personalities in your books?
Maybe not so much friends as perhaps non-friends, like politicians and people like that, because that's a very interesting thing that you can do, because you can cast all the real life villains, unfortunately, as birds, and now birds can't sue you. So I mean, that's what I did in Crow Chronicles, and got away. I mean, you can get away with it. I did that with a monkey book also, Faltu Faltu, which was just, I mean, I had freaked out. So it's better to do, I think, maybe with the people you are not very fond of, then people that you like and all that, you might as well have real characters, which is what I do in the other books that I do.
Okay, so if you get featured in one of the books, we know what that means. Okay, we have a question from Piyush who's asking, he wants to know, how did you come about to write your first story and how did it get published?
I think the first bird story was actually Crow Chronicles. The first book was that, because that had been sort of stewing in my head for a long time, because as I said, birds reminded me of people. That, I have the Shikra, who's the hero, small, fierce, I mean, never say die, and a go-getter kind of thing. And so I had my hero straight away over there. It reminded me straight that would make a perfect hero. And then, of course, I had what I call non-conventional characters, like you had the Saras Crane couple. Now they're called Devi and something else, Devi and something else. And Saras Cranes are supposed to, when they meet, they're there forever. It's what we would love, love at first sight. And if one partner dies, the other will die of grief and all that. So these guys are different. The woman, the lady, Saras Crane, is ambitious. She wants power. And her husband is a philanderer. He's chasing Demoiselle cranes, he's chasing Siberian cranes behind her back. So these are the antique sort of characters. Crows, of course, made the perfect villain. I'm sometimes sorry for them, but then I do have nice crows also, like there's that jungle crow, Depraven Craven Raven, who is the sort of second in command for Mr. Kaur, who is the villain of the piece, and is a white crow, and not an albino, but a white crow. So I had a lot of fun doing that. And then there's Titri, the red wattle lapwing, perfect as a journalist, because his newspaper was called Did He Do It? Did He Do It? So, they just fitted it, it was like a jigsaw fitting it. And the plot, of course, was, in fact, I'm rereading that book now. I don't know how I had the patience to plot out all those intricate sort of things that were happening and counterplot and stuff like that. But that's how I sort of go about it. And that was the first book that was based on birds. And after that, I went into short stories. Another one I did was the Little Ninja Sparrows, about a pair of sparrows who they live nearby, baby sparrows who are bullied by their siblings and don't want to learn to fly. They are scared of heights, and their siblings have completely scared the daylights out of them. And so they run away. They get caught, and then they get caught by this fellow, and this fellow's caught a lot of other birds also, and he plunks them in paint and dyes them different colors and sells them. So these guys get dyed. And so that the story then continues how they eventually have to learn how to fly to save themselves, kind of a thing. And so, it was great fun again doing that. So the thing is, I get a lot of enjoyment out of all this. And that's what I think the birding should be for everybody. You should just enjoy yourself and have a laugh where you can.
We have a question from Vishal who's asking, is there any Indian writer who has been a source of inspiration for you?
Indian writer writing on this, well, Salim Ali. Certainly, he's the guy who, his books, his description of behavior and the description of the bird are just, absolutely pinpoint accurate. Many times, I've searched for a word in order to describe what I've seen in the bird, and you read his description and the word is there. So I met him, in fact, just as I was getting started. We went to his house in Bandra, and he sort of nodded away, and I was used to take pictures of seagulls over there. And he's just very gently encouraged. He didn't say you have to be interested and all that. And his room was, of course, full of journals and books and stuff like that. And he came across at least as a very genial kind of a person. And but his writing, even his other writing is just, because he mixes everything, he mixes the human part of it into the technical part of it also. And I just read, I think recently, a letter that he'd written to Dylan Ripley, in which he's complaining about all these names being changed and technical details. He says that I'm so fed up with this, I just want to go out and look at my birds. That's it. So he's the guy I think who really could say was an inspiration.
Okay, great. I think maybe we'll just take the last question for the day. Okay, Puneet is asking, if you were to write about the COVID-19 lockdown, which bird would you say would be the most disciplined to follow all the lockdown rules?
That's a tough question. Which bird? Because they are freaking out these days. They're not into any lockdown mode. And I guess it'll have to be maybe a very timid bird. I don't know which one would sort of fit the bill as such. So, I mean, sparrows are not that timid, and ammonias are a little timid. They're quite sweet. So they are, they keep a low profile. So birds that would probably listen to orders. And unlike people who, can't even put their masks on properly and use it as a fashion sort of a thing on their chins. So I think you'll need some kind of a law-abiding bird. Like mynas, no way. Mynas remind me of Delhi people in Delhi. They're always ready for a fight, no matter what. Jo karo mukha-mukhi. So, I don't know, it's been difficult to sort of say.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ranjit. Nick, over to you. I'll just share the screen with the question of the day again, because some people have been asking for it.
Yeah, thanks, Ranjit. That was very inspiring and nice. Great stories by you as always. And we have lots of messages from people who've been reading your columns in Indian Express, and you're reading your magazines, reading your books. So lovely. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody else for joining in, and see you all next weekend. So here's a question for the contest. Do put your answers in. Thank you all. Bye.